power has been recognized across many industries. And in one in particular, in healthcare, it could be truly life-changing. Welcome to this first event of our Open Mic Next in Health series at the Novartis Pavillon. Today we're going to talk about the future of AI in healthcare. And we are really impressed by the interest we generated in this event. We were literally sold out within 12 hours on site. And it's, you know, this building, we are honored to be the first external host to host an event here in the Novartis Pavillon. If you have time, please have a look around after the event. Welcome everyone who is joining us online today. As you're most welcome to get involved in the discussion during the panel by sending your questions via the Mentimeter app in the chat function of Hopin, and also by joining the one-to-one networking option after the event. My name is Ros Schneider. I am Community Manager at the Switzerland Innovation Park Basel Area site on the Novartis campus, where we host more than 25 digital health ventures by now. Our organization works as a catalyst for innovation and progress. This means we connect, we engage, and we support people with ideas and passion in many different technology fields. We accelerate their projects, and we try to bring them closer to the Basel healthcare ecosystem. This effort is actually strongly supported by Day One, our resident accelerator. And this is a joint initiative, this event series, and we really provide to foster, to explore healthcare in the region by bringing together innovators and experts from startups, from the academia and from the industry to talk about these innovation topics in healthcare. With me on stage today is Lukas Scherdl. He's the director of the Day One initiative. Lukas, can I hand over to you, please?
You can. Thank you very much, Rahel, and congratulations again on the incredible organization. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to be able to welcome you today in this exceptional venue. My name is Lukas Scherdl, and I'm the director of Day One. So Day One is an open innovation platform and accelerator of healthcare ventures. And we're really pleased to be able to welcome you today to discuss the emerging trends that have the opportunity to really change the healthcare journey. And so that's what we're doing today. We're talking about AI, and what we see more and more is that Basel Area is actually really an emerging powerhouse for AI. We really see that the rich heritage of the Basel Area being at the edge of industrial transformation is something which is more and more taking AI as its inspiration for the future. So we're really pleased to be able to welcome you and to have this conversation today about what this means for the industry, what this means for healthcare, and what this means for patients as well. As I mentioned, Day One is an open innovation platform, so if there's anything that you're inspired by today, or if there's a need for an idea which you have, which needs to be taken further, then please check out our website at day1.swiss. And with that, I'd like to welcome our esteemed moderator to the stage, who will take over from me. So welcome Anne. Anne is the head of the Novartis Foundation. I'm just going to give my intro to you. Anne is the head of the Novartis Foundation, and is committed to drive data, digital and AI-led innovations to improve population health and narrow health inequalities. So, and we're really, really grateful to have you with us today. Thank you so much. I'll hand over to you there. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Lukas. And also from my side, welcome everybody. While we welcome you, let me also welcome my esteemed panelists on stage. But do you know you are really pioneering here because you all are opening the pavilion for its first event? Give yourself a round of applause, and for this panel as well. Welcome. It's truly exciting to have this here, and it's really worth doing a tour after the event if you can make it. So welcome again, and let me start by saying we are going to discuss AI in health today. And in fact, last year we made a whole landscape analysis, a research of everything existing on AI in health for our AI in health maturity roadmap we developed together with the Broadband Commission. And in that landscape, we saw how tremendous the impact of AI in health already is. In fact, it's helping R&D accelerating the discovery of new drugs or the development of new drugs, or even repurposing existing drugs, as we've seen during COVID a lot. In clinical care, we all see it. We know best the image-based diagnostics, as AI can make diagnosis for radiologists faster and more accurate, but also in risk stratification, for example. We've seen examples in India with Apollo hospitals developing cardiovascular risk scores that far outperform the existing old risk scores we use since ages, and can predict your risk on a cardiovascular event such as a heart attack 7 years in advance, for example. Another area is direct patient serving services, or like the chatbots, Ada Health, you all know from here in the neighborhood, but Ada Health Symptom Checker, but also the Ping An doctor in China, they are delivering 24/7 services to patients around China, 900 million customers they have, and they deliver it via internet, pharmacies, health centers, hospitals, all thanks to the power of AI. And lastly, it also optimizes health system processes, because you can, for example, detect on a phone call who has a sudden cardiac arrest and be much faster than the responder of the telehealth telephone call than in detecting it. So you know how many minutes it can save for a person to be addressed then when they have a cardiac arrest. It's really life-saving. But the fifth domain in which AI in health is already having a tremendous impact is in population health. And that's the last one I wanted to talk about, because in fact we saw in the past it was mainly to detect or monitor or control epidemics. In fact, AI, Blue Dot, was the one that detected the COVID epidemic in the end of 2019. But nowadays, you can use AI so much more powerful to help policymakers in countries take better decisions on which interventions will have the largest impact on the greatest number of people. And that's in fact what we are doing at the Novartis Foundation. We are working with data-rich cities such as New York, Helsinki, Lisbon, and bringing data together from the health sector, but also from non-health sector, to understand what is it that really drives these health inequities. Because you live in a certain zip code in New York, you have a 25% higher risk of having a stroke than if you live in a neighboring zip code. That is really unacceptable. And data and the massive computational power in AI we have at our hands now, we can solve that, we can understand it, and give these insights to policymakers to then address it. And that's the goal at our work at the Novartis Foundation. But today, we're going to hear from all of my panelists here next to me what all these other aspects are that AI already has a tremendous impact in health. And let me start by introducing you, Fernando. Fernando Garcia Alcade, I'm not sure I say it right, is the head of data science for products at Roche. So welcome, Fernando. You hold a degree in computer science and a PhD in bioinformatics, and moving from academia to Roche since quite some years already. The first 5 years you worked in drug discovery, focusing on infectious disease, I believe, and afterwards, since then, for now 3.5 years, you're the head of data science for products, really looking at how you can enable clinical decision making. So you're going to tell us something of how AI can help us generate insights for healthcare.
Good. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and also for the invitation and the opportunity to be here in this incredible venue and talk about a topic that is extremely exciting to me. I'll be very happy to share with you today in the space of what Anne has been dedicating her time, and I can basically repeat one by one the work that she's saying, since we're working in very much the same scope. The idea that we want to have is to identify how AI and other advanced analytics capabilities can generate insights to enable healthcare decision making. I will touch upon some of the challenges that we have ahead of us, and also I'll provide a little bit of a flavor how we approach this topic at Ros, where I've been working the last few years, as has just been shared. More recently in a new area that has been created around the data and insights within Ros Diagnostics. The area is called Ros Information Solutions, and the mission here is to help labs and providers with digital solutions that are data-driven, that enable this insight generation. Our mission is actually rather simple. Our vision is we are strong believers that data, coupled with smart analytics such as AI, have the potential to improve how healthcare is delivered by augmenting the amount and quality of information, knowledge that our decision makers have at their hands when they need to make their decisions. In addition, we believe that this also can be a catalyzer for moving towards a more sustainable value-based model and move away from a sole focus on volume and focusing more into outcomes and quality of care. So we've entered this relatively new field, and along with other partners and players, like Anne has been sharing, we are facing some challenges, of course. I believe they are common to all of them, and today I'll focus in a few of them that I believe are very important to alleviate in order to succeed in this journey. I'll start by touching upon data privacy and data access. I think that the first question one should ask himself or herself when trying to develop or have a new approach into an AI-driven algorithm that predicts, for example, a stratification of patients is will I have the data that I need respecting the regulatory constraints that are complying with the privacy regulations? If that's not the case, can I take the necessary steps in order to make the case, be it anonymizing, de-identifying, aggregating, etc. At the same time, very importantly, we can develop a very cool algorithm, but are we going to have the data that we need to fuel this algorithm at the right time, with the right level of quality that we have? That's not always the case, especially as you probably are well aware that our partners in the healthcare space, labs, providers, are undergoing their own digital transformations, where, among other things, they're trying to improve the way they capture and they structure and organize their data in order to enable secondary analysis of those data sources. So that's another point to really take care of. Assuming that this all green-lighted, the next important point that we should pay certain attention is the end user. So will the end user be ready and willing to use the solution that you provide, even if it's of very high quality, as the example that were shared? Here, there are other factors to consider. I will focus on a few of them again. First, I would say it's very important to consider how we're going to deliver these solutions. So what is the channel? As we all know, the decision makers in the healthcare space are extremely busy for good reasons, and they're getting more and more busy. So if you provide a solution which is disruptive to the normal processes, the possibility of adoption dramatically decreases. So one needs to consider this point. In addition, okay, we validate our solutions, and we are confident that we have a solution that will improve the standard of care. But how we created the necessary evidence to gain this trust from the decision maker? Here we have two aspects. One is the evidence generation plans that we have to have, be it publications, being in the regulatory framework, but also transparency and interpretability of the model. So in this journey, we need to move very far away from what is traditionally a black box approach, and provide the necessary information for the decision makers to understand what can they expect from our solutions. So I know I'm running out of time, so I'll summarize the last part, and I want to mention three main things. One is that at this stage where we are, For enabling AI, it's very important to be technically very, very high, meaning that you can control in the artificial intelligence field all the models that you need to use when and why. But in addition, one needs to go one step further, and I believe my colleague will touch upon this later, on the domain knowledge, on the specific indication or disease that you're working. So having this duality of technical expertise with the domain knowledge will make the artificial intelligence expert going the extra mile and creating a successful model. At the same time, if we are developing solutions that are heavy on data, analytics, and artificial intelligence, we need to ensure that this expertise is core to the product development process. We at Ros, for example, have created a new role, established this role in the product teams that we call data lead, who is fully embedded in the product development and is responsible and accountable for the decision happening and have the responsibility of developing and being hands-on expert in the skill set that they are needed, but at the same time also is able to orchestrate other activities that are around data and analytics. Okay. The last pieces that I would like to mention is when you approach this kind of field and you want to make enable decision making at scale, the channel is very important. So what we're approaching is to try to integrate very much with these new processes and or create platforms that are seen as ecosystem where we can deploy our solutions there. Okay, this will enable that the decision maker can actually leverage the solutions, and at the same time we are working very heavily with policymakers in order to shape these policies for making it the best for patients, for the healthcare system, but also in a viable manner for the partners in the ecosystem to be able to develop these solutions. So I'd like to conclude just emphasizing the message that AI, in my opinion, does have a key role in the future of healthcare. And this potential is fully leveraged only if we will have the right data at the right time and the answers that we deliver are delivered to the right person through the right channel. So it's a complex but very exciting topic and very, very much worth it to work on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fernando. So let's move on to you, Enkeleda. I think the points you made, Fernando, are extremely relevant. You need to build the trust before it's going to be used, and then you need to find the right data, obviously. But Enkeleda is the head of the Laboratory for AI and Dean of the Master of Science in Medical Informatics at the University of Applied Sciences and Art here in northwestern Switzerland. So you founded the ETH spin-off AINet in 2017, and you're really very active in the Swiss network of startups. So Enkeleda, you're going to tell us something of how AI is transforming healthcare and health sciences.
Thank you so much, Anne, for the very nice and kind introduction. I'm very happy to be here with you today, and it's an honor to actually open also the pavilion. As my colleague Fernando from Ros said, of course, AI is transforming healthcare. I'd like to point a little bit of how it is doing it, in which way. And it's transforming healthcare in the way we apply medicine. Initially, it started by just following the traditional medical steps. So we tried to classify disease from disease, as you mentioned, knowledge domain areas. We went on as technology progressed, from disease to disease, to system, from system to system, to organ, from organ to organ, to cell, to molecule. So each puzzle piece at a different granularity. So AI actually adopted the perspective of medicine, trying to implement it in healthcare. What has happened lately is that this transformation has happened fast. Of course, we are here, and slow. It started in the 60s at the same time. And finally now, after adopting a first medicinal perspective, AI is actually trying to bring in the features proper to AI. So we are exploring a more holistic approach to healthcare. And that is reflected on how actually cross-disciplinary all AI-related topics to healthcare are. So you need, at the same time, to have this broad knowledge, comprehensive map of knowledge, and that, on the other side, very deep niche expertise that goes very deep in the granularity of medicine, so across areas. So how can we actually educate a generation that can do both things. And that is what I'm doing at the University of Applied Sciences and Arts with students. And what we see is we can give them a comprehensive map, first of understanding healthcare as a whole. And then we deep dive at the projects at hand. We do this in collaboration with industry. It's not anymore about chemistry. You cannot train a traditional chemist. This will not help you with applying AI to medicine, to healthcare. So it's about the reaction of chemistry itself. That's the level of granularity and niche knowledge we need. These students, you can imagine, even a chemist sometimes has actually to look back into the details of a reaction. And these students are trained on the project comprehensively, then they deep dive into the specific topic at hand, such as, for example, the specific chemical reaction. We are aware that you cannot teach 2 semesters of organic chemistry in a few hours or a few minutes. That's why this is reflected how also industry has prepared for these applications with multidisciplinary teams. However, these multidisciplinary teams do not have a common ground. They don't have a common language. So we are still reflecting fragmentation to the organizational higher perspectives of industry. So you have these cross-disciplinary teams. You have the data scientists, you have the chemist that speaks to the biologist, and they try to speak together. No, it's not true. AI now has requested a paradigm shift of what we teach, how we teach it, and to whom we teach. So I'm extremely surprised to ascertain that some students, for example, I have to surprise you, of all ages that come, they are extremely agile in taking up this knowledge and applying it in the cross industry. On the other side, this is how we train people to actually fill a need. As mentioned by Anne and Fernando before, the applications of AI are already existing. They go from classifying embryos that are viable for in vitro fertilization to actually predicting death in the hospital with very high accuracy. This already exists. In the middle, we have as well other applications such as image processing, diagnostic tools, therapeutics tools, and so on. This is all existing. What we are trying to do is to actually allow this innovation area, this blurry innovation area, where science sometimes is mingled with science fiction, and most of us would still consider this as dreams. We need to allow these people, these implementers, to execute what is actually possible in AI. And at the interface, knowledge transfer between academia and startups, that's one way of doing it. We shorten the gap of actually academic research to deployment. We see that users such as doctors, biopharma, or even patients adopt these solutions directly from the academic research. And we need at this point just to spend our efforts to incite and to make a proper accelerator environments for these innovators to do what they actually are able to do, and as well to let a little bit of space for us to be surprised on what actually AI can do for healthcare today.
Thank you, Enkeleda. This was really very interesting learning about this paradigm shift. I guess health has always been like the glue between the different disciplines, so it's a nice way of how you adapt the way and what you teach to whom. It's fantastic. Casper, it gives a nice segue to you. Casper Wilstrup is the CEO of Apsu, a startup you founded, a Danish startup, with recently opened an office here on the campus in Novartis in day one. And Casper is an AI researcher, and your focus is on explainable AI, because you're very skeptical about black box AI, I understand. And you call it like the Oracle of Delphi. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you very much, and thanks a lot for having me here today. It's great to be here and have an opportunity to speak about this problem of AI that lies close to my heart, and offer what I believe is perhaps the solution. So yes, an oracle. What does an oracle do? It answers questions, right? But what does an oracle not do? It doesn't tell you how it came up with those answers. So there's no way for you to actually validate whether the oracle is making sense, or whether it is just speculating or overfitting, or is being biased, or is perhaps completely wrong. So in certain situations, that's not so much of a problem if you can measure over time that the oracle gives right answers, because you can still rely on it to a certain degree, you can learn to trust it, but what you're giving up on the way is understanding. And I feel that AI is actually to a certain degree leading science to give up on understanding, or in other words, to give up on theory, and say we don't have to understand what actually happens in, say, an organism as it develops a disease, as long as we can just predict it. And I don't want to deny that that has a lot of value, and it can certainly help save lives and increase diagnostic accuracy and a lot of other benefits. But what it cannot do is really advance science. So if we want to put the science back into the center of what we do in any field, then we have to at least be skeptical about this approach, this black box approach of AI. And additionally, it wasn't always so. Wasn't actually the way that the original founders of the field of AI thought about AI. If you study what people like say Alan Turing or McCarthy wrote about AI in the 50s when they founded the field, they were actually thinking about something completely different. They were thinking about AIs that could help us understand and make reasonable and rational explanations. That's called symbolic AI. That's a word we apply to that today. And symbolic AI has kind of left the stage and have been taken over by another kind of AI called sub-symbolic AI, which is virtually what everybody is speaking about today. And sub-symbolic AI is the problem. Sub-symbolic AI is not designed to give explanations. It's designed to give predictions, and only predictions. So I believe we have to go a little bit back and say, what do we want our AI systems to do? Do we want them to support understanding, or do we want them to replace the need for understanding? And I'm not saying that it couldn't be relevant to use AI in its current formation in many situations, but it certainly isn't always a good choice. We in Apsu was actually founded to try to do something about that. We are trying to reinvent the idea of symbolic AI, AI that answers questions by figuring out how to answer the question, not by just feeding data. I sometimes like to give an example. If I ask people about how many red cars are there in, say, Switzerland, then a process starts in everybody's heads, and you start thinking about a method to compute that number. It could be how many people live in Switzerland, and how many of those people have cars, how many of those are red, and so on. And then you can come up with an answer. Let's say 200,000. That's me, I guess. And that's what a symbolic AI should be able to do. It should be able to say, how did I arrive to this conclusion? Because then we can inspect it and we can say, do we believe that? Was there a mistake somewhere in the reasoning? Was there something that was biased? Does this not generalize to the future? Can we not use the same method on another country or another patient, and so on? That's the kind of questions we can ask if we know what the explanation really is. Apsu was founded to build AI that does that. So we work in drug discovery, in disease understanding, in analyzing clinical data, and try to uncover not so much predict what will happen or who will develop diseases, but instead come up with new explanations or hypotheses about why these things happen in the first place.
Thank you, Kasper. This was very inspiring. I like the oracle, but I don't trust it.
They can be useful.
So, yeah, absolutely. Stefan, you are our last panelist. Stefan German is here online with us. I think you're somewhere in another country far away from here, Stefan, but you are the CEO of the Botna Foundation. And Stefan is passionate about leveraging technology for human and societal well-being. And he wants us to use it to grow towards a world where we collectively embrace courageous kindness. So, Stefan, you're going to tell us more about AI and human rights. Are we becoming the modern-day data slaves?
Thank you very much, Anne. Really great to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you a few thoughts. The title is quite provocative. As you mentioned, I'm actually supposed to be in Morocco, and therefore I was choosing to be online. I ended up testing COVID positive and I wanted to fly but I'm totally healthy, totally fit. So that's probably one of the things why we need to have some better sort of research tools, including AI, to actually understand these differences. Whereas my brother, when he had AI, had to go to hospital and was quite severely ill. Whereas I wouldn't even have recognized it if I wouldn't have been required for travel to go for a PCR test. Now, I would like to consider three main issues in my short input. The first one is that a recognition that we are actually data. Humans are data, so we are data. The second one is really the issue that has been highlighted already by Fernando, is the importance of trust as a key element to really harness AI in health in the future and currently. And the third one is the importance of adhering to human rights principles in all that we do within AI deployments from end to end. Now, why is this so critical that we are engaging in the topic of AI? There are some commenters who probably, and I would side with them, make the point that AI has been rapidly progressive to what some call a general purpose technology that's going to transform every aspect of our lives in society and all that we do. Some, they say that this transformation will be more transformative than a world that brought in electricity. And if we take a moment to imagine a world before electricity and the world today with electricity, it's almost not imaginable how a transformation we are experiencing the next 20, 30 years. However, as the provocative title states, I'm personally really a techno-optimist. But the deeper I have engaged over the last 3-4 years, as the foundation has been deeply investing into research, supporting programs around AI in health all around the world, the more I have come to the conclusion, and we together as a team, that unless we address some key critical issues that are linked to the issue of data, the issue of trust, and then ultimately the importance of human rights, that we will not be able to sustainably scale and enhance the opportunities or the upside of the uncertainty that AI will bring in health and other fields. As a foundation, Fondation Botnar, we have invested in sort of these three areas of data, then trust, and human rights, and I will give some examples. Together with some other foundations, we have supported the Joint Commission of the Financial Times and The Lancet called Governing Health Futures 2030. This was a substantive effort that really looked at the whole issue of AI and data within a health space and came up with some very strong recommendations to move forward that we can leverage and harness these technologies for the future. The first one was really that we need to see digital within health as one of the new determinants of health. The second one is clearly that we need governance architectures that foster trust. The third one is that we really need to increase the sort of data use for the public, general public. And the last one is to really leverage the active participation of young people in all these aspects, as they are the ones who are using, but as well mainly driving some of these new insights. The second element that we have worked on is on trust. We can see that the trust of the general public into science, into institution, has considerably declined the last decade. To regain trust, we really need to address collectively some of these challenges that we face. One of the investments we have together with the Wellcome Trust and some others is called IDAR, which is the International AI for Health Research Collaborative. This is an effort based in Geneva, working closely with global communities that are doing research in AI and the WHO, that really aims, like the CERN, that has been for the last 30, 40 years, or actually since 1952, established as a scientific collaboration to bring the best brains together in AI health research and get governments together to finance collaborative research for the global public good. The third one is around human rights. We just are launching next week a major 6-year partnership with Amnesty International, a leading human rights organization with their Amnesty Tech team, to really deep dive on how can we ensure that AI solutions are absolutely from the idea to the research, to the development and the application and rollout, adhering completely human rights. I think only when we collectively, and I think it's important whether you're a startup, and I'm happen to be involved personally in a startup on an online psychotherapy platform called TheraU that's actually going to be incorporated in the next coming weeks here in Basel, hopefully part of that AI and digital health ecosystem, and eventually becoming successful in my spare time. That as startup entrepreneurs, we really consider human rights issues, but the same whether you are a small, medium enterprise in that space, or whether you're a big global tech company, or you're a life science company. We do need to address and adhere to these principles, then only then can we really harness the power of AI, given that actually as humans, we are all made up of data. And when we talk about data privacy, data ownership, we actually talk about the ownership of us as individuals. And hence, if we don't want to be modern day data slaves collectively, we better address these issues deeply from a human rights perspective. Thank you.
Stefan, really important points. And trust is a point that every single one of you brought out. So with this, we open the floor to questions. And I see I have a lot of questions here on my iPad already. So if I may, I start with some questions from participants. But please raise your hand if you want to ask a question. We'll alternate between the room and the online. The first is what methods sustainability of AI decisions? I guess it's directed to you, Casper.
If that is the case, then I'll certainly try to give an answer. So, typically, if you have black box AI, there's a range of methods that you try to apply on top of the black box methods to explain the black box. Methods have names such as SHAP and LIME, and there are several other approaches that you can do to kind of try to tease out the meaning of a black box model. But to me, that is it's good, and it can give you what I would call feature association. You can figure out what kind of things that you put into your model is actually effective for the outcome of the model, but not necessarily the more finer details in how these things come about. So if you really want to explain a phenomenon, you have to not ever have the black box model in the first place. So the answer to the question in terms of absolute is that we don't try to explain any models at all. We use our technology to find the explanation directly in the data. So what we're explaining is the data. And that is done, but the problem here is that there are so many possible explanations that you have to explore, and that's usually what a scientist will do, sit and reason and think about how this can be explained and then come up with some hypothesis. And that's essentially what our system does. It uncovers potential hypotheses from the data directly.
Absolutely. That will give us better answers, more trustful answers probably. Any questions in the room? Please raise your hand. Yes, please.
Hello, thank you so much for this very, very interesting topic. And I would like, this is a general question for all the panelists. It's about how much we want to rely on the predictability of the applications. Because you talked before about, let's say, an application in a hospital, about predicting the death. And then So do we want to rely on that predictability? So where is the human will? So if a physician is willing to go beyond his practice and try a new treatment, and if the patient is willing to change completely his lifestyle in order to change his current situation, so do we, I mean, it's a question about how we want to rely on making decisions on the applications. Do we want to stop big projects just purely because an application said so, that it doesn't have high chances to continue? Or we want also to put the human will into that, because we know that I would say in all industry and in human history, that the human will has always the strength, can always overcome even the biggest challenges that we face. So how much we want to rely on these artificial intelligence applications and tools?
Thank you very much. I think it's a really relevant question, and many of us think that AI should really augment or potentiate human intelligence. So let's hear from our panelists. What do you think? Would you like to start, Fernando?
I can try. Yeah, I fully agree with you. In my view, the AI enabling decision making should be actually supporting the experts to make these decisions, and the decisions should rely on the human factor to be made. So it's not substituting our healthcare experts; it's augmenting or supplementing the information that they have at hand. In the ideal case, they will be very well trained. They will have explainable model behind the scenes that they can understand, and then they will be able to assess at a given point of time. Like, okay, for this very patient, do I believe this suggestion, this hint that the model is giving me, or I have other factors that I need to take into account? So, in my view, moving forward, I think that would be the way to go. To focus on supplementing the information that they're at hand, but definitely leaving the final decision in the hands of the human factor.
You want to add something, Angeleda?
Maybe I can follow up. This was actually a real case scenario from hospitals in the US. So it is actually something that is already being implemented in hospitals, and doctors, physicians can be notified about this. Of course, it relies, as also Fernando said, at the end, the decision is of the physician. So that brings quite some responsibility and quite some open topics that we still have to discuss on how actually this integration will happen in the hospitals at the end, but before the technology comes to the actual hospital where it's being implemented, in the training of the physicians, in the training of the professionals that are using this kind of technologies.
And the end users should be involved in the development of it. Otherwise, it will never be picked up as well. This we see with every solution that comes to the market. So that's really very, very relevant.
Just shortly about users, and because I skipped it in my brief introduction, users actually are taking products directly from academic research. So it's not anymore that these case studies are used to drive investment or policy making.
Right.
It's actually the users that request services of AI directly to be implemented in the hospital so that they can actually take better decisions, not to substitute the decision.
Yeah. Very nice, thank you. Another question.
Can I come in?
Stefan, yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I think this is a very interesting question and has both a deeply ethical dimension longer term that we have not really resolved, and immediate even legal issues. You know, if let's say there is a certain AI that gives certain, you know, suggestions or actions, and then a clinician or a physician in a hospital doesn't act upon, does it mean now that you can sue the doctor for not having listened to the AI? And there are emerging cases in this area. And as we move, we don't know when, 10 years, probably not, 50 years, maybe, the issue of artificial general intelligence, when through sort of neural networks and sort of deep learning, and Casper can talk more on this, you know, we get to the stage where the kind of AIs have capabilities that transcend the average human capacity. You know, then it's really interesting. What does it mean then? So I don't have the answer. I think it's something we collectively need to find answers.
Stefan, you want to add, Casper, or we?
Not surprisingly, I strongly agree. I think the need for a human in the loop in critical decision making is crucial, and I think that equipping that human with the best possible foundation to answer is what the technology should do. Yeah.
Supporting it, yeah. Absolutely.
Explainable AI again.
Okay. Indeed. How you deal with unbalanced data when you have, for example, much more adult or male data to train your model? What do you do then? Enkeleda, go ahead. I see you want to start.
There's two ways usually you can do. This is quite a technical question. So you can upsample or downsample the data if you don't have enough of it. And of course, to train specifically on a data set, then you have to define the question at hand a little bit more specifically.
Yeah.
But yeah, upsample or downsample from the kind of data that you have, so you simulate more data, or you take a subset of that data so that you actually have a balanced input for the AI. That is one way.
It has to be representative, yes, absolutely. I see another question in the room. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question to Enkeleda. So you made it sound like there are a lot of applications and they are being used, and in healthcare it's still maybe 1%, I think, that are actually using them on a daily basis. So my question is actually more about, and the problem oftentimes are the processes, let's say in a hospital, just like an AI solution doesn't really fit in and a doctor wasn't trained on using them. So my question is just in your program or department, do you also try to educate doctors? And because, yeah, there are a lot of technologists, they love to develop cool algorithms and applications, but in the end user doesn't just, it's not just about test this application and they love it. Do you also try to make physicians be like, hey, we need AI or machine learning in our hospital?
Very happy to answer this question. Actually, it comes a very timely question. There were a couple of things that were mentioned before. One, that young people drive innovation. I have to challenge that. Our students are across ages, and we interview the outliers. We interview the outliers that could be up to 50 years old. They actually want to learn the hard skills of implementing AI in their own solutions. Second, the students are across disciplines. So we have doctors that we train in medical informatics. We don't do it in the classical medical informatics that rose in the 60s, only about electronic health records. Now it's a comprehensive, holistic view of actually medicine, from electronic health records to the molecular drug discovery, personalized medicine, and so on. So yes, we train cross disciplines. And it's very important to be aware that many of these students actually come with their own ideas, are professionals, are working part-time in pharma industries or hospitals that come up with their own ideas to implement in the classroom and to spin out actual companies. There are 2 in foundation this year. I'll take up on what also Stefan said about, we have like a digital health twin that is coming up in June as an incorporation, diagnostic tool for using AI for autoimmune diseases, and these are coming from students. So, but not the classical students you can imagine. Like, we had the best patient, for example, group expert in the class. Nobody knows more than him. Sometimes these students are actually, would be lecturers in their specific field. So it's quite an interesting times for academic research. And the gap is really small into actually implementing these products. And you said regulation, yes, but in the hospitals, you don't need to apply this across hospitals. That it's about policy and regulation, and it's a slow process. To implement a beta tester or early product, early prototype, that is already happening. And sometimes, in 2018, for example, FDA approved the first diagnostic tool for retina preventing blindness. That was the software alone, no need for doctor advice. So we have to be aware that the field is very much forward, and it's not compared to the automation industry, right? These are 2 different fields. But if we compare to the baseline, to its own baseline, it's extreme fast in the last 10 years at least.
Very clear. I know there's another question in the room. Let me, oh, and another one here, and I guess that's gonna be the max we can take. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. So you said you are trying to guarantee human rights. Now I'm assuming the, in brackets, current human rights may be overcome given such a new technology. So if I'm right, my question is, who is looking at redefining the human rights, and in what direction are we going with the new or more adequate human rights?
Stefan, we don't hear you. Yes, now we hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Very important question. Actually, the partnership that we are launching with Amnesty International, with the Amnesty Tech team, is actually part of the dialogue of what does it actually mean, human rights within a digital age, and really moving into digital rights. So there has been considerable efforts. There is a very interesting report by the UN Special Rapporteur, Philip Alston, on the digital welfare state that really brings up topical issues of human rights in digital. There is a general comment that the Committee of the Rights of the Child has done on basically giving in-depth interpretation of the existing rights frameworks within a digital age. So there is a robust debate going on. I would think the challenge we face is, so I myself started off as an engineer, microengineer. I was learning to code years back. But, you know, people are not aware of these human rights. And that links to like the bias question, you know, there's data bias, but there is coding bias. You know, I was a few years, 3-4 years ago at the World Summit AI. 85% of the participants are young white males, almost no women in the room. If they code, you code the biases that you have in your own life into the codes. So these are things that can only be addressed if we really have, you know, inclusive approaches where users are involved very much from the beginning, and that addresses then as well the uptake. Unless we have more human-centric designs with patients and doctors involved in these designs, the uptake will be very small. There was an interesting information from Germany with the DIGAs, these digital solutions, where I think currently less than 3% of all the doctors are prescribing these DIGAs, which they could, because they are basically don't know, they don't trust them, or they doesn't fit the workflow.
Thank you, Stefan. In fact, our time is up, but I saw you had your hand up for a long time, so I want to give you very shortly, please.
I appreciate it.
Thank
you. A quick one, also on ethics. How do you strike the balance between human rights, also data privacy, which is obviously a basic human right, and being able to extract meaningful insights from large pools of patient data?
It's a short question, but requires probably a longer answer. But Stefan, if you can give a short answer, please.
I can give a very short answer. There is two ways. You know, in public health, we always have the tension between the societal benefit and the individual. That has been well addressed in the human rights community, and they're good principles. On the technology side, we have now with split learning and federated learning really new ways that you don't need to pool data, that the algorithms can basically go where the data is and then still make sense in an anonymized collective way. So technology and EPFL, Professor Yaki, I think his name, is one of the leaders in these new technology, and MIT as well. So look up split learning, federated learning, and this will sort of help us to be very much respecting human rights and privacy, etc., but still really harnessing the power of the collective data that's needed.
Thank you, Stefan, and thank you everyone for your very active participation. Thank you for all the online participants with many, many unanswered questions here on my screen. Unfortunately, the time is up, so please, a big round of applause for the great panelists. It's impossible to summarize everything that has been discussed, but I leave it over to you, Rahel, to finish our event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne, and thank you very much to all the panelists for these very insightful discussions. Before I end, this is the first event of an event series. We will have 3 more events coming up this year. The next event is actually taking place on the 12th of July on the topic of net zero health, so make sure to stay tuned here. As always, if you have a project, if you have an idea that you would like us to accelerate, if you would like to relocate to the region, or if you are looking for workspaces, reach out to us, look at our website and get in touch with us. Lucas and I will be here. Many more of the team is actually here, so come up and talk to us. Thank you for everybody joining online. Now we will open the one-to-one networking sessions that you can join, and we will be here for a coffee break. So everybody in the audience, please join us for more conversations. Thank you very much.